This is a Geek Leader. Hey guys, this is a Geek Leader, and my name's John Rauda. I'm your host, and today we're going to be talking about the art of negotiation. One of the things that leadership is all about is influence, and influencing other people to do what you want them to do. And that's kind of the whole point of leadership, is to lead people so that they're better themselves and help you out in your situations. So I want to talk about negotiation. I get asked a lot, and I teach a lot about negotiation when I'm doing my class at the local university. And I actually have a section where I have students negotiate with one another on fake salaries and fake offers and things like that. But I think it's really important to talk about negotiations. I have lots of people that have asked me about how to negotiate salaries. And there's no better opportunity to negotiate a salary than right before you accept an offer. Because at that point, you have a lot of leverage. You have a lot more leverage then than you do once you started working at that company. But it doesn't mean that it's all over once you get into the job. So I do want to talk about how to negotiate, when to negotiate, and even what's negotiable. So I want to go through a couple of things about negotiation and some things that I've used in the past. And hopefully it'll help some people out and help people be able to negotiate. The first thing you need to do whenever you want to negotiate anything is to do your pre-work. All right, so do some work ahead of time to figure out who you're going to be negotiating with and what things that you want to negotiate. And I've got a little checklist that I go through whenever I'm doing pre-work for negotiation. It's the what, when, how, choices that you need to make, your goals, what your bottom ground is, the BANTNA, which we'll talk about and describe what that is in just a minute, and what other info could you be useful while you're negotiating. So let's go back through that. The what. What are you negotiating? Don't try to negotiate too many things. It's best to stick to just one main thing that you want. So if it's for a job, you may want to negotiate salary, or it may be vacation time, or a remote work agreement, something like that. Whatever it is that you're negotiating, pick one thing and kind of stick to that. Now, if that's not going to work, you can always fall over to something else. There's more than just salary that's negotiable when you're looking for a job. And we'll talk a little bit about going into a job interview and situation in just a few minutes. Understand when you need to make a decision. The when is not necessarily when you're negotiating, but when do you need to decide by. So if you currently have a job right now and you're looking for a new job and you're going to negotiate that time, the wind's on your favor. You don't have to leave your job. You don't have to have something right now. You can hold out. The same thing when you're purchasing like a new car or anything else. You can time your approach in your negotiation of what makes sense for you, what's best for you. For example, if you're negotiating against a salesperson that you know has, if you've done your pre-work and you've reached out and found some information about the sales commission structure and things at the company that you're going for, if you're trying to purchase a car and you know that this sales guy has to sell a certain number of cars by a certain date, you can either do one of two things. One, hit him at the beginning of that time to try to get the sale, or wait till the end and hope that he hasn't reached his quota yet and get a good deal to get out the door. Because a lot of salespeople like to hit that quota early, so they like to sell a bunch early and then get their bigger commissions out at the end. So it just depends on the salesperson, but if you've done your pre-work and you know who you're talking to, you can find out when's the best time to make your decision. All right, the how. How are you going to communicate? Is it going to be face-to-face? Is it going to be email or phone? A lot of times today, job offers come through email, or they may come through a phone. And that makes it a little bit more difficult to negotiate, because there's more that comes into negotiation than just the words that you say or the words that you type into an email. All right, so understand how you're going to negotiate, because that's going to change your approach. Next, know what your choices are. What are all your options? What are your choices? Obviously, if it's a job, to accept the job, not to accept the job. Do you have other job offers? If it's to buy a car, to accept this car, to not have a car at all, to keep the car you have, to trade in your vehicle, to sell your vehicle. There's lots of choices that come into play. So know what all your choices are. It's best just to write these things down and have a list so that you can be familiar with that before you go into the negotiation. These are things that everything on this pre-work list, checklist, you really need to have in your head. You don't want to take the list in with you and have to refer back to it. Have all the stuff memorized. Know it inside and out. All right, next up, what is your goals? This is where a lot of people mess up, is they'll have a goal and they're saying maybe they want a job that pays $85,000 a year. So they go in there, and if the offer is $85,000 a year, they should take it because they met their goal. They won. But a lot of people will get caught up in the negotiation and they'll go above and beyond what their goal is. And sometimes they'll price themselves out of the job, or even worse, they'll get the job, but they'll have made enemies during the negotiation process. So understand what your goal is. Don't be greedy. If you win, you win. If you get your goal, game over, you win. Just don't be greedy and keep going, because that's where things can kind of mess up. All right. Next is know what your ground is, your bottom ground. What's the lowest number that you'll take if it's for a salary? Or what's the highest price that you'll pay for a vehicle? That'll be your ground if you're buying something. So understand that information as well. Next is your BATNA, and that's your best alternative to negotiated agreement. It's just a sales term that we use, that whenever you're going into an offer and you understand what that offer is, understand what the best outcome is if you don't accept that offer. What do you have next? What is your best alternative to that negotiated agreement? So at the end of a negotiation, before you accept or decline, understand what your best alternative is, because that may be better than where you are today. And a lot of times, if you don't have that documented, it's hard to think of it at the time when you're on the spot. So make sure you've written that out before you go into the negotiation, so you know what your best alternative to the negotiated agreement is before you even get that agreement. So if you're going to go buy a car, understand that what your best alternative is. It could be keeping your own car, it could be going to a different manufacturer, different car brand, whatever. All right, and then know what other information might be useful. Understand the kind of business relationships that you have that you can leverage. Networking is extremely important when you're negotiating certain types of deals and jobs. And I actually heard a stat the other day that it was something like 80% of jobs in the technology field aren't found through resumes online. Like a lot of people, everybody says, oh, I submitted my resume online. Well, what's sad is less than 10% of those are probably getting even viewed. But 80% of those jobs are found through networking. So a lot of it is who you know. All right, so one of the most important things whenever you're negotiating is the ask, the initial ask. And that's where we all get nervous. We all get scared. And what I found is sometimes just the ask will get you the deal. So one of the things that I've done with certain companies is we negotiate up front, the price of software that we're purchasing or whatever we're buying. And we also negotiate up front what the annual maintenance agreement will be. So a lot of times software, the standard is like typically 20%. We'll say, oh, we'll give you 20% or 18% of what the purchase price is your annual agreement. So we always try to negotiate that down, get that down as low as we can, so that we know going forward we're still getting a good deal of the software. But in the past, I haven't really thought about renegotiating that amount. Just we agreed upon, let's say that we agreed upon 16% or something for the software. Instead of negotiating that every year, I just let it go. So this past year, I wanted to try something different. So when I got the maintenance agreement for this certain software vendor emailed out to me, it was time for renewal. And instead of just accepting it like I've done in the past, I sent a simple email that just said, since we've been such a good customer during this past year, I think it would be great if you could just offer me a 10% discount on our renewal. What do you think? And surprisingly enough, I didn't get any questions. I didn't get any back and forth. I didn't get a request for a phone call to talk about it. I just got an email with a new agreement attached that included that 10% discount just by an ask. A simple minute email. Took me less than a minute probably to write that and hit send and save thousands of dollars. So it's a great way that you can just ask and understand that whenever you're in a negotiation, once you get past the ask, it gets a lot easier from that point on. Because once you've made that ask, you realize that, it may be awkward for you, it may be uncomfortable, but now it's just as awkward for them. It's just as uncomfortable for them. So if you think you're uncomfortable in the negotiation, they're just as uncomfortable as you are. No one feels comfortable doing this kind of stuff. Although there are some people that say they love to negotiate, they like negotiating, they like haggling, it's still somewhat uncomfortable. They may get a thrill from it, but it's still somewhat uncomfortable. All right, so when you're doing a negotiation, understand that there's a few things that are more important than the words that you're saying. Communication is far more than just words. All right, there's a 7-38-55 rule, which states that 7% of your communication are the words that you say. 38% is how you say it, like your vocal tonality, the tone of your voice, and then 55% is your body language. Now, I don't know how true these numbers are. This was just a stat that I found online that I heard someone that was talking about public speaking give one time, and it kind of stuck with me. And one thing you have to note is that if you're negotiating on the phone, those numbers are obviously much different because your body language isn't visible. So you lose that 55%. So now you have to realize that there's a higher percentage on your vocal tonality and the words you say. So it's not just body language. Now, if you can negotiate in person and face-to-face, you can play to some of the strengths of body language. But first, let's go back to vocal tonality. When you're saying things, you want to make sure, especially if you're on the phone, that you smile when you say them. It may seem stupid, but people can detect whether you're smiling or not. So if you're on the phone and you're smiling, people can tell. They can hear that. So make sure that you say things with a smile on the phone. It makes you seem more pleasant, and people want to work with someone that they like. They don't want to work with people that they don't like. And the same thing with negotiating. You want to give people that you like things. You don't want to give people things that are jerks. So be friendly in your negotiation, be likable, and let people know that there's nothing personal. You're just trying to get the best deal for you because you're worth it. You're valuable. You add this value. All right, so make sure that you follow up on those things and that body language. Some of the things that you can do with body language if you are in a face-to-face negotiation, you can do certain things and to make your body language be more aggressive and more, I don't want to say aggressive, that's actually the wrong term, just more confident, to be more confident. You can do certain subtle tricks, like if you can sort of mimic the way that they're sitting, their posture. People like to be around people that are like them. We all like people that are like us. So when we see someone that's sitting similar to us, that is maybe holding their face a similar way or their head a similar way to us, we tend to gravitate towards that person. We like them a little bit more, and it'll help the negotiation go a little bit easier. All right, but don't like mimic the person. Don't just copy them or anything like that. That's just silly. But go through some of those checklists. Make sure before you go into negotiation that you know exactly what it is you want, when you need to make your decision, how you're going to be communicating, what all your choices are, what all your options are. Because let's say it's a salary negotiation for a new job. Maybe they can't budge on salary. Maybe they're a startup and funds are low. Well, maybe you can negotiate equity in the company. Maybe you can negotiate a remote work environment. Maybe you can negotiate more vacation time, more PTO. All those things are negotiable. All right, so know your goals. Where you're not, don't get greedy in this. Know exactly what it means to win. Know what you want and know what your goals are. So when you hit that, you don't have to keep negotiating. A lot of things you can do if you're buying a car is have a number that this is the price that I really want for this car, and feel free to share that number. And if they agree to it, take it. Walk out the door. That's your number. You win, right? But make sure you do your research so you're not selling yourself short with that goal. Next up, make sure you remember your ground, what your lowest ground is, the lowest that you'll take for a job or the highest price that you'll take for a service that you're buying, and know your best alternative to negotiated agreement. And if you have any other information that you can find out about the person, maybe things that they like that you can, use to talk about leading up to the negotiation to help you become more likable to them, could also be helpful when you're negotiating. All right, so I hope this helped out with negotiation. I've got a lot more information. Like I said, I give a whole lecture on this during one of my classes at the university. So I've got more information on it. If anybody's interested in more, just hit me up. I will love to chat with you or shoot you an email back with some tips and other things that I know. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks.